This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at pm-podcast.com or send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. Hello and welcome to this premium episode number 158. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast and it's nice to have you with us. And because this is a premium episode, it means that only you, our premium listeners, have access to it. Thank you very much for your support. Mark Phillips, lead evangelist of Vertibase, is our guest today, and he makes an interesting statement. He claims that all project managers are agents for economic growth. Really? Because I've managed mostly small and medium-sized projects throughout my career, and I didn't see myself as an economic growth agent. And most of the companies that I've worked for also didn't have the appropriate corporate culture to make me one. So you can guess that I was a bit skeptical when Mark first suggested this topic. So let's hear what he has to say about the arguments that I've just made and what skills and mindsets such a project management agent of economic growth needs. So, put on your dark sunglasses, stick in your earpiece, holster your Walter PPK, and then your project, should you decide to accept, is to enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview. Today with Mark Phillips, lead evangelist of Vertibase.
Hello, Mark. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Cornelius. Pleasure to be here.
You argue that project managers are agents for economic growth. What exactly do you mean by this?
First, I mean that any project manager should really instantly get a raise because of the importance of the work that they do.
Okay, everyone who's listening to this now loves you.
But seriously, what I mean by that is that when you look at an economy, the factors that contribute to growth, one of the prime factors that contributes to growth is innovation or change. And it is because it's innovation and change that brings something new to the market in terms of a product, or that allows an organization to find a new and more effective way of delivering the product or service that they provide. And project managers are experts at change and change management. And this can be through different skill sets. Everyone has a different skill set on this on the spectrum of what they're doing in the change process. But project management, in its strictest and most classic sense, is about managing something that's new, something that is in managing change.
Are there any specific industries where you see this happening today?
It's happening across industries and really across the world, particularly in this economic environment. And it even happens when things might be growing more robustly. There is always a drive to innovate and a drive to change, whether that's being driven by wanting to capture and maximize profits, or whether it's being driven by needing to survive and reinvent oneself. Certainly here in Detroit, we've seen it with the auto industry over the last 5 years. The need for project managers specifically and to kind of retool the process of what it means to produce a car. So besides industries where it's being forced upon them, there's a cycle that comes around every 10 years or so, but it's certainly very strong right now, where there is a renewed focus on how to deliver innovation within the enterprise. And there was recently an article in the Wall Street Journal about it, and certainly it's something that corporations, big corporations and small organizations and nonprofits are always striving for, is how do we create a culture and an enterprise of innovation? Google has their famous 20% rule, or the 20% time that they allow people to play around with different projects. Certainly companies like 3M and General Electric are known for carving out time and spending a lot of money on R&D in order to spur innovation. So this kind of drive fits in and I think dovetails very nicely in what a project manager can bring to the table in the innovation cycle and in fostering an atmosphere of innovation.
Do you maybe have a project up your sleeve, one that listeners may have heard of, where the project manager was such an agent of economic growth?
It's very hard to pinpoint a specific project manager because for better or for worse, many of us are behind the scenes a lot of the time. What you can see in general is when a quality process, like an ISO or the such, is working properly, and by what I mean by that is where it's not a bureaucratic or a paperwork burden, but is actually a process of quality and continual improvement. Where you see those happening, that's where you see this kind of growth. And I guess going off on that angle, when you see General Electric, Six Sigma kings that they are, when you see them functioning at the highest level and succeeding, when it was, let's say, underneath Jack Welch, not to say that they're doing a bad job now, but this was kind of his bailiwick, where regardless of the industry that the corporation went into, whether it be medical devices or aeronautics or light bulbs, there was a drive to be number one or two. Now, you can't get there just by always wanting to hire the best subject matter expert in that particular area, because managing an organization like that is a complete nightmare. You can't do it underneath one roof. But managing it by setting up a quality process or, a supercharged PMO that can set up processes that foster innovation and processes that allow the flow of information and the proper metrics up the ladder, as it were, through the subject matter expert, then up to that project management or PMO or then quality office. That's where you can see that that they can set up a structure and really succeed in a whole wide variety of industries. Another great example is that I'll pull is currently the richest man in the world is a guy named Carlos Slim Helú. He's from Mexico. Now, in a former life, I used to work on Wall Street and I used to analyze his companies there. And you would see that no matter what industry he went into, whether it be mining, producing tires, whether it be telephony, whatever industry he would go into, he would target an 18% operating margin. Now, he wasn't to say that he was an expert in each one of these industries, and it wasn't to say that he only hired the experts to manage these industries. I think the reason that you were able to see it, and as an analyst, we were able to say, really with a high degree of certainty that within X number of quarters of him acquiring company, their operating margin would be 18%, is because he had the processes in place to track the metrics that drive that kind of innovation and that kind of growth to hit those targets. And that's something that project managers are expert in.
Yeah, let's talk about these processes, because one of your arguments about innovation is that what needs to be taught is how to develop processes that maximize innovation. Is your example that you've just given, is that exactly what you mean by that?
That is one example. If your goal there is if the key performance indicator or the goal that you're trying to accomplish is an operating margin. That's certainly a great example of it. Another idea behind that is creating a culture where it's okay to take risks. I think a lot of project management has come out of engineering. And you see many project managers coming from engineering, and certainly a lot of the more traditional tools are built on an engineering process, whether it be building a military weapons system or an aerospace project or a large construction or energy project. So they're very exact. And the whole goal of project management tools and methodology from that point and the philosophy is let's quantify as much as we can, let's measure, and let's control to the greatest extent we can those variables that we can quantify. And let's also then have repeatable processes where the goal is to have zero or near minimal defect rate. When you look at the history even of the PMBOK, and when you look at things like CMMI, all of these processes all come out of the Department of Defense in a very real sense, or in England when you look at Prince 2, and they come out from the drive to be able to track vendors and be able to track work product, really to achieve a near zero level of defect. And then obviously to control budget and scope. But the defect and the quality of the output and the vendor's ability to do that was tantamount, because you were dealing with development of, again, weapon systems or energy projects like a nuclear plant, where the outcome of anything north of zero in terms of risk is catastrophic in terms of human life.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that has come then a lot of the project management methodologies. Now, what's happened is project management is thankfully now creeping into all different areas. And what needs to happen to develop it and to turn it into a process of innovation is to have to remove yourself from that, to recognize that many of these projects are not life and death projects. There is not a catastrophic outcome if a risk appears and the project isn't necessarily delivered. And obviously there are ones where there are bad things that do happen, but whether that be to a balance sheet or to God forbid, to safety. But the mindset of many project managers, and of certainly many organizations that adopt formal project management, is we want to minimize risk. We want to control as much as we can. And that stifles innovation. So by creating processes that maximize innovation, it means creating a culture where risk-taking is rewarded, and where being creative in solving a problem is recognized. In one of my recent blog posts on something I call linchpin project management, which is a concept pulled from Seth Godin's recent book on being a linchpin, is that project managers may not have a lot of formal authority sometimes. On the org chart, we kind of sometimes dotted lines or even just floating bubbles somewhere that get to roam around. But there is, so traditionally people will try to get power or authority by being nice, through coercion, through politics, through having a project sponsor, somebody authorizing them to use resources on a project and the such. But really what I argue for is innovation-based authority. So authority that's based on innovation. When you see somebody investing themselves in a project manager, and when they try and invest themselves to really come up with a creative solution, I think that should be recognized, really become a source of authority in an enterprise and in a process, so that that will help foster an overall culture of innovation and of risk-taking that can then drive this kind of innovation and economic growth. Now, on the subject of risk-taking, I do want to point out that one of the things that makes a project manager uniquely qualified to be this agent of change and to be the person who can implement this culture is, again, that we recognize risks and know how to deal with risks, and at the very least know how to set up touch points where we can check back in on the process or the project and say, you know what, the risk is now too high. We either have to course correct or kill the project. So it's that skill set that combines the ability to envision, lead, and execute change with a skill set that says not everything going to happen here is going to necessarily be good. And if it gets too crazy, we can always throttle it back.
Okay, let's talk about the project managers for a moment here, because not every project manager who's listening to our interview right now here, they're going to go, oh yeah, that's me. I can see myself in that role. There's a mirror in front of me right now, because some of us, we manage small, medium-sized projects. I'm implementing SharePoint. We're making a small incremental change to our operations here in the company. How do those project managers fit into the picture of the agent for economic growth? How should they see themselves?
I think every individual has something unique to contribute in the world in a larger sense, but certainly in their workplace. Today's market and the economy as a whole rewards things that are unique and that I use the word pulling from Seth Godin, that are remarkable, that stand out. And this is not to say that everybody has to invent something brand new and that everybody has that capability, but everybody has a unique contribution to make on a project and in those things and those people that they come in contact with. So even if it's a very small project that you're working on, you're still working on something where you can put yourself into that project. And I just don't just mean the sweat and tears part, but the blood part of it, as it were, of really pulling that part of you that's unique or your unique perspective on it, giving yourself the permission to do that, and putting that little spin, that which is uniquely you, into that project. So it's not just that you happen to be the person that's being that cog in the machine and that anybody could do that, but that you have something unique to contribute to it, and even in a very small way, you can give of yourself in that project, and that little spark that is you will make it unique and will start to drive that kind of change in the organization. Because what you're talking about here is you're not relying on the brain power or the ingenuity or good fortune of one or two particular inventors or entrepreneurs. What you're relying upon here is the uniqueness of each human being and the creativity that each person has. And again, by creativity, I don't mean that composing symphonies or putting paint onto a canvas. I mean that which is what differentiates one person from the next is you're tapping into that creativity and that uniqueness of each individual and allowing that by being the project manager and opening and doing that, you're opening the door and saying, it's okay to do this. It's okay for us to not be the cog. It's okay for us to be remarkable and unique, and that will create, little by little, can create both that innovation-based authority as well as can start to drive innovation as a whole in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Earlier on, you talked about mindset. And in an earlier conversation before the interview that you and I had, you mentioned the term disruptive mindset. What did you mean by that?
Innovation is a disruption or a change in the status quo. And if you go back just in economic theory to the Austrian school of economics, a gentleman named Schumpeter, you could probably pronounce that much more accurately than I could, is you need to have creative destruction, as it were. In a cycle of innovation or of economic growth, there is disruption and there is what can be looked at as a destruction of the way things used to be, and then a creation of the way things will be in the future that lays the groundwork for an economy in the future and new industries. And I am not talking about fomenting religion or a messianic apocalypse or any kind of destruction in that sense. It's just the little changes that happen every day where, we used to do things this way, now let's try doing them that way, in a new way. So it's that disruptive mindset, that permission to experiment and to disrupt what has been the status quo. That's what I'm referring to.
Mm-hmm. On top of being a project manager, listeners probably realized you are also a trained economist. So you bring both these skill sets to the table. So what kind of skill sets do you think a project manager needs in order to become such an agent of change?
Confidence in themselves to do things differently.
That's it?
I think that is the first thing. Very often people don't give themselves the permission to be creative, and they don't give themselves the permission internally to let themselves try new ways of doing things.
Oh, okay. And how do you get there if you don't have that?
How do you get there if you don't get it? You have to believe in yourself. I mean, you can have it from any level or any kind of school of thought that you would subscribe to through personal growth or empowerment. There are whole industries on doing that, but I think it's just very simply, the first step is try a little thing that's new and see how it goes. Just by trying and actually doing it, not by planning. I know many people who spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to do, envisioning all the consequences of what's going to happen, and decide whether they should do it or not. It really is just do it. There's an adage, I forget who it comes from, that says, I think it's actually from Apple, that says that real developers ship. And I would say that about almost any person who can do this and feels empowered to do this. Is one of the traits that you'll see is that people will try new things. They will ship. When we look at the big examples that we all see in history and the such, every entrepreneur, every successful or most successful business people have failed more often than they've succeeded. And it's that permission and ability to say, okay, failure is just a learning process. It's just the next step in the continual path. I mean, I always find it remarkable when, I don't know if this is a true story or not, but it's something that's certainly been circulated around. When Netscape first came out, Bill Gates himself started walking around to every single department, regardless of what the project was that they were working on. I mean, I'm sure he picked and chose which ones he did this to, but he went to specific projects and said, I don't care what you are doing right now. Stop. We need to be doing that. We need to come up with a browser. And actually, you just saw this happen right now with Microsoft and the Kin and their cell phone effort. I don't know how much money they put into developing their own hardware, the Kin mobile phone, 2 years worth of development and the big marketing campaign, all of these kind of things, 30 days after launch. 30 days, which is a blink of an eye for less than a blink of an eye for a company of that size, and certainly for a marketplace. They canned the whole thing. So that ability to change and recognize that failure is okay. Failure is okay, and I would underline that and highlight that even more by, if you look just at the economy as a whole and the way an economy functions, a capitalist economy functions, a free market, and certainly what we've seen over the last couple of years, or anytime you see a downturn cycle, is anything unremarkable doesn't survive. So whether you are going to have a job or not very rarely depends on whether you fail in one small area or not. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about things like negligence or blowing off your responsibility or doing something careless. But more often than not, those people who are unremarkable, who don't have a unique contribution to make in a workplace, and this can be down from working at a fast food store on up, those are the people whose jobs will be lost. So really, there is just as much, if not more, risk in not taking chances and not allowing yourself to be a unique individual as there is in doing so.
Mm-hmm. In our first interview, we talked about Verdabase, your company, the tool that you manufacture, and how it helps to contextualize communication. But you not only manufacture this web-based project management tool, you also provide project management services to your clients. How do you see this agent of change being required by your customer? Do they expect this of you?
We certainly do have engagements where we are brought in specifically to try to drive innovation. There's a defense hardware manufacturer that, for example, that we're working with, where we are there to help drive innovation. And it's very interesting when you look at defense contractors, because you have to walk the line between compliance with the numerous DoD or DCAA regulations and then trying to have a culture that facilitates innovation. So that is certainly something that we can be drawn into, I think, or engaged to do. I think also just when having this philosophy means that when we come to the table, we're bringing something unique as a project manager, and it's not just let me execute your project on time, on budget, within scope. It's having this understanding that, okay, let's try to do something innovative here while we're meeting those goals. Let's dig a little bit deeper.
Okay. Let's end our interview. It's been rather theoretical so far. Let's end our interview here with something actionable. What are the first maybe 2 to 3 steps that you could recommend a project manager can take tomorrow when she or he walks into her or his office to become an agent for economic growth?
Sure. It very much depends on where they are in an organization. Again, the kind of scope of the projects that they are in. But the best way to make a step is, this is a project management, is break it down into, find out where you are in the process and break it down until you can get to a work package or something that's actionable. And when you look at being an innovator, an agent of economic change, there are many phases to change. There is being a leader through change, leadership through a change. There's planning change. There's envisioning change. There's executing change. There's controlling risk on change. And different people have different skill sets across that spectrum. Some people are outstanding planners. Some people are great leaders. Some managers, project managers, are great at executing. So the key to in terms of taking an actionable step is saying, okay, what am I really good at? Am I good at planning? Am I good at executing? What am I really good at? Okay, so that thing that I'm very good at, let me try doing it a little bit differently. Let me try doing it a little differently. And the key is let people know that you're doing it differently. Not only is it good project management communication to convey, to give people accurate expectations of what's happening, but it also can create this culture of innovation and economic growth and economic change, to have the project manager be an agent of change, to say, look, I know we've done it all of this way all the time. Let's change it up. I'm going to try doing it another way. And I'm going to tell you, I'm trying a new way of doing it right now. And I want you to know that it's fine if you do it as well.
All right, perfect. Mark, thank you so much for being on the program with us today.
Thank you, Cornelius.
And that was Mark Phillips on how all project managers are agents of economic growth. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. If you are a project manager who wants to become PMI certified, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the PM Prepcast, and study for the PMP or CAPM exam by watching over 38 hours of video training from pmprepcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, yeah, you know what's coming, right? Please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this almost philosophical statement. Project managers will not get the staff they need as long as they muddle through with overtime, ulcers, and superhuman effort. Only when the deadlines are missed will senior management approve the staff who, had they been available at the outset, would have prevented the missed deadlines all along. Until next time.